Hello everyone and welcome to episode 6 of the Racer's Edge. Still trying to recover from the excitement, the drama of Fernando Alonso winning the UBS Chinese Grand Prix. What a day that was. Brilliant drive too by Kimi Räikkönen and by Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes and by Daniel Ricciardo and by many people. I thought Jenson Button drove really well in the McLaren too. Not a good car yet, but he was still there comfortably in the points. And racing, gotta say, on more or less the same strategy, give or take a pit stop or two, but they both started on the same tyres. Sebastian Vettel in the Red Bull Racing Renault. Right off the top of the show, just tell you about Sebastian Vettel, I gotta be still confused as to why they chose to take that strategy in qualifying and not run the option, get him much further up the grid, and maybe he would have been on the podium. Who knows? Very strange that that's exactly what Sebastian also did in the Monaco Grand Prix last year. Recall he went on the prime rather than the option. Mark Webber got the better grid position, and we all know what happened on Sunday. So it'll be interesting to see how Red Bull recover from that. So much to get through in the show today. We've got lots of great guests on the show. Don't forget you can join us now live on Twitter. The hashtag is TRELive. The Racer's Edge Live. Makes sense, I think. And thank you already for the questions we've had on our Facebook page and indeed on Twitter. And no better way to get the show kick-started than with a question from on Twitter from Roger S. Brewer, who I think speaks for many, many people who are Formula One fans around the world. And he says, can you analyze on the next program how difficult the Lotus would have been for Kimi to handle with that nose damage in China? Well, it's exactly one of the points that we've been talking about a lot, and to which I kind of put Alan Permane, the head of Trackside Operations, Director of Trackside Operations for Lotus F1. We caught up with him earlier today. He's in Bahrain already, of course, and it was in the form of a telephone conversation. So this is how it went with Alan Permane of Lotus F1.
Hello, Alan. It's Peter Windsor.
Oh, hi, Peter. How are you?
Yeah, good, mate. Firstly, congratulations to everybody in the team there. What a great race for you and for Kimi in the E21 in China.
Yes, it was good. We obviously starting so strongly. So, we obviously had one eye on the win, but that wasn't to be, unfortunately. But we still had a very strong result with a sort of less than optimum car, to be honest, for the damages sustained with the Perez incident. So,
yeah, it was a bit like, from your point of view, and you've been around a while, I know it reminded me a little bit of Fernando's drive at Monza that year when he had half the front hanging off the Renault as it was then, and still, I think he finished fourth or something like that. That Kimi drive is not far away from that.
No, that's right. It was a reasonable chunk of downforce, but I think what it also did to him, he wasn't quite as let's say cutting through the traffic as well as some of the others, and I think it just hampered him. The loss of front end just hampered him a little bit in diving down and braking into the hairpin, into turn one, to passing people. So not only did it hurt our lap time, but I think it just cost them a little bit in traffic as well, unfortunately.
Well, that being so, amazing pace and a brilliant result at the end of it. But I love that bit when he came on the radio and said, "Has the radio broken? Can anybody tell me if the nose is damaged?" or something like that.
Yeah, we had said to him, just sort of stand by, we're looking at it, rather than giving him a sort of snap answer. But I think he wanted someone a bit quicker. You can never tell with him whether he wants information or no information. So it's a bit tricky race to race.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant stuff. And I guess, it's tempting fate to say it, but you're going to a circuit where you looked so good last year, and where the characteristics in terms of it does punish rear tyres for a lot of the teams out there. You must be feeling very, very good right now, I would imagine.
Yes, that is true to say. I mean, one never likes to get too optimistic, but I don't see any reason why we can't continue this sort of trend. We didn't have a great Malaysian race, and we're pretty sure we know why, and we've corrected I wouldn't say errors, but we've learned from there and applied that to Shanghai, and obviously had a very good two very good cars in qualifying there. And I don't think any circuit particularly scares us. I think we should be good anywhere, but here particularly with the race pace of last year and the tyre wear and degradation, it does. The E21 looks to be continuing in that sort of that strong form in that area. So I think we're very optimistic for a good race here. Yes.
Yeah. Well, Alan, you used the qualifying word there, and that, to me, Malaysia aside, and I know we've only had 2 other races since then, but that is what is so different this year. It looks like Kimi can really get a quick qualifying lap out of this car, or the combination somehow is just doing a better job than last year. And once you've got that really strong grid position, then the weekend is a different sort of weekend for you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt that he's more comfortable in this car, qualifying-wise. It's definitely... we can set it up to for him to say that's pretty much where I want it to be. On for example, Saturday morning last week in Shanghai, he did one run on the primes, and he said, "Look, there's not really any point doing a second run. The car's there. Don't worry about it." And I think we went out and just did some starts. We did a front wing tweak or something like that, and stayed on the tyres. But it's from the very first run on Saturday, we played with it around with it on Friday, did some overnight changes that we were pretty confident of, and straight away Saturday it was there, and I think that showed through qualifying where he just got quicker and quicker as the session went on.
It almost makes the hairs on my arm stand up when you say something like that. When a really good racing driver says, "Yeah, the car's there, don't worry about it, let's put it away, we'll do a few other bits and bobs, it'll be fine in qualifying." It's just a wonderful moment. I can remember Nigel Mansell saying that a few times in the Williams days, and I'm sure other great drivers have get into that zone. But from your point of view as an engineer, that must be a wonderful moment when you hear that.
Yes, it is good. It's very good. He obviously knows exactly what he wants, and we've been able to deliver that, certainly. I think Melbourne was similar. Just that the wet qualifying isn't our strong point, or the wet running isn't our strong point, and it's an area we need to look into and improve. And I think Sepang and Melbourne hurt us a little bit there with the little bits of rain we had at both of those. But obviously last week was dry here. I'm sure it's going to be dry, and we'll get on top of it before too long, that's for sure.
Alan, under the heading of your Kimi looks to be very good in terms of management of rear tyres, and this is a circuit which historically is quite tough on rear tyres. Would I be going a little bit too far in saying that it would be kind of nice from your point of view if the Pirelli compounds are a bit softer? In other words, everybody else was in a bit more trouble than potentially they may well be?
Honestly, I think if they originally planned to bring the hard and the soft here, and then they've gone away from the soft to bring the hard and the medium. Honestly, I don't think we would. I think I kind of agree with that, because if you saw in Shanghai, the soft tyre really was a qualifying tyre. It lasted for half a dozen or maybe 8 laps at the start of the race, and I think Perez put a set on in the middle of the race and did 7 laps or something. I know they obviously tried something to see if that would work, and it clearly was tough for it. So I think here, which is arguably harder on tyres, it would be a tricky tyre to manage. I don't think it would change our lives, obviously, because I don't think you'd really use it in the race. You're
right.
likely to start with it and then get off it as quick as you can onto the prime tyre.
Yeah.
So I'd have to say I think we're happy with the selection. I think there'll still be reasonable degradation. Certainly on the soft, on the medium, on the option tyre, but even on the hard tyre, there'll be. I still think you're going to be looking at 3 pit stops here from our initial figures. Obviously, early days without running and that, but the work we've done back, looking at last year, looking at what the tyres have done this year in previous races and in testing, it looks that way to us. So I think we'll still have if we've got a good advantage on rear tyre wear and management and temperature control and stuff, then I think we'll still be, we're happy with that tyre choice.
Good, Alan. One question, because I know you're a busy boy. One final question. I noticed in James Allison's preview, he's saying that you might be trying an internal suspension mod that is related to ride height control. Paraphrasing there a little bit, under the heading of "If it ain't broke, don't fix it." I presume that's a sort of a Friday thing. You'll see how it goes, or is that a potential race setup?
Yes, it's true. We have got some new parts. It certainly will be a Friday thing. but as ever, if you stand still, you're going to get beaten, honestly. So we're continually trying to improve and things like that, and it may be too early to race any new bits. But certainly on the suspension side, aero side, we're a little bit more confident on, of course, and we're constantly adding and changing the aero setup of the car. But we'll see. I can't say one way or the other, honestly. But I think to say if it isn't broke, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think in this day and age, as I say, you can't stand still or you'll be overtaken. So I think there's a balance to be had between the two, if you like.
Yeah, well, maybe the answer is let's bring back active ride.
Yes, that was good fun.
Alan, very best wishes to you and the team for the weekend, and thanks for spending the time to talk to us. We'll hope to chime in with you very soon again.
Okay, no problem, Peter. Nice to talk to you.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Alan Permane, Lotus F1, looking very good as they approach the Bahrain Grand Prix. Don't forget how quick Kimi was there last year. Maybe could have won that race had things gone slightly differently, but he certainly pushed Sebastian Vettel very, very hard. So a buoyant atmosphere at Lotus F1 right now, and correctly so. Interesting, I think, at the end there, we started to talk a little bit about the internal suspension mods, for want of a better word. They're not geometrical wishbone type mods. And talking to Craig Scarborough, our resident technical expert, about that, a reminder from Craig that Lotus, as in many of the top teams, and now indeed some of the midfield teams, have been running longitudinal front and rear suspension interconnection, for want of a better word, for several years now, at least 2 or 3 years. But what we think is going on now is they're looking to do that laterally now, right to left, left to right, as well as longitudinally. This is something that Mercedes, as we talked about with Craig last week, have been working on, and we suspect that's probably what Lotus F1 will be trying on Friday. And if it works, who knows? They may well run it into the race. Although, if it ain't broke, don't fix it is still quite a good dictum, I think, for Formula One. But if you take it another way, I think it's much more difficult for teams sometimes to know why they're quick than it is to know why they're slow. That may sound strange, but actually knowing why you've got a great car sometimes is very difficult. As Williams, for example, are probably going through right now. What did they do over the winter? They just developed their 2012 car, and what's happened? It's actually not as good at the moment. Let's hope it gets better for them. But Formula One raises all these questions all the time. That's what makes it so fascinating. Also interesting to hear Alan say that the weak point at the moment for that car is its performance in the wet, as kind of we saw in Malaysia and to some extent in Australia. But hopefully, I can't imagine there's any issues there in Bahrain right now. Hot, dusty, sand everywhere. More questions coming in. There's a few generic questions, which I think I'll deal with a little bit later on in the show. We've got so much to get through, and we've got Daniel Ricciardo coming up as well, so that's going to be a lot of fun too. Talking to the Aussie about his P7 in China, in a great week for Australian sport, if you take Mark Webber's race out of it. We'll get onto that in a second. But just to continue the Kimi Raikkonen theme and the brilliance, I think, of that drive, not in any way forgetting Fernando Alonso, and we've got more Ferrari content coming up in the show. But just taking Kimi in isolation, we did see a lot of damage on the nose there. We saw Kimi kind of cynically, tongue-in-cheek, I think, asking the pit if there was anything going on at the front of the car, which is his way of sort of saying, I'm still going very quickly, aren't I? And so no better person, really, to talk to about that specific part of a Grand Prix driver's vernacular, and that is the ability to compensate when things do go wrong. And it may well be something broken on the car. It may well be braking slightly too late for a tight corner in the middle of a very good qualifying lap. And how do you recover from that and still getting away with the pole? And the great drivers can do that. So that was the subject about which I chatted to Rob Wilson midweek. Rob, in the middle of doing so much work at the moment, he's working with a lot of good IndyCar drivers and with great results. And I caught him in the middle of 2 days he was doing with young Nico Müller, the German who's racing in World Series by Renault this year, very talented young driver. So we spoke to Rob, and this is what he had to say about a few aspects of the art of driving.
Something that every driver should have in their repertoire, because it's a manipulation you do it even when you have a car that's balanced. He will know he's got a light front end. And I work on this a great deal when you get to the very top end of a racing driver. And that is to say, of course, you've always got to be prepared for what's coming next. But that's part of the structure, braking and so on. But when you're coming up to a corner, you know, say it's a downforce corner, you know you're going to have a little bit of push on the other side because you've lost your front wing or lost some downforce. And before that happens, you have to predict what sort of angle you're going to want on the car, and there'll be a point, perhaps you're brushing the brakes a little bit going into a corner, and you will at that point, before you've got anywhere near the apex, put on the additional bit of steering, maybe hold on to the brake for a fraction longer and get a direction change before what one would have called the normal apex. Because your thinking will be, I've now lost downforce in the front, the longer any corner goes on, the more time I'm comparatively going to lose. The same tactic you use if your front tyres are starting to go off. Why would I want to go fast around the corner and ask more of them? So you simply, before you get to your apex, you put on a little bit more steering. You may stay off the throttle for a little bit longer, or you may stay on the brake just a fraction longer and make a bit of a point where the car can change direction a little bit like a 50-pence piece rather than a constant U. And then the remainder of that corner, you've minimized the disadvantage. You're trying to get the steering back out of it. So you're asking as little as possible of it from the apex onward. And the predictive manipulation of what is going to occur next is a very critical part of a racing driver, and it's part of a natural racing driver. I know we work on structures and such like, and technical terms, but a natural driver, almost like a rally driver, will be able to get that nose in and be quite happy to hold a drift. You're not holding a drift, you're just minimizing understeer. It's a normal procedure.
So it's not a reflexy
Not at all.
thing.
Not at all. The idea is not to use your reflexes at all, so you're reacting to nothing. You get the message. It could be a rear end problem where you've lost downforce or grip at the rear, in which case it's going to be a very slow turn on the steering wheel. It's going to be a teasing of the throttle until the car's got past that critical point, so that you can then increase the throttle with less steering lock on the car, and you adapt immediately. And you might lose a half a tenth here and a half a tenth there, but to the outside world it looks the same. It's that's what I would call it, a predictive manipulation. And you can work on this with drivers when they get all the other structure stuff in there. If you start doing it before they've got there, then they think, oh, that's great, we just do a dirt track speedway thing, get the nose in, hold opposite, look, I've got car control, that stuff. It isn't that. It's trying to make a straight line out of something where you're going to naturally have a longer curve than you really want. You've got to create a form of rotation. Now, if it's a corner that's completely flat and you really don't want to lift at all, then you would just start turning the wheel a little bit sooner and a little bit more so that you get your understeer out of the way. You'll put on, say, 5 degrees of extra steering, I'm making the number up, for about 2 degrees direction change, because you're going to lose some of that. I'm making that number up as well. And all you're looking for is the shortest corner you possibly can, because you're in trouble. Same with worn front tires. You almost develop a block system of driving in, wait, direction change, go. You'd be amazed how little time you can lose. But that's in the gift of a Kimi, that's in the gift of a Lewis, and I think Alonso, and a number of natural racing drivers. And it just means, because this happens a lot, it used to happen in my day as well, and you'd say, you'd knock your front wing against Terry Boutsen or someone like that, and then the sponsor would say, well, how come your wing's in the air, and we spent all this time and money getting the wing just exactly right, and the thing still goes out there and runs at the front. And because it's a difficult one to explain, you say, but you've adapted.
Let's talk about the 3 drivers you mentioned, Kimi, Fernando and Lewis. And without mentioning names now, let's talk about a driver who isn't of that ilk. What do they do when a front cascade fin breaks? They say on the radio, you know, I'm going to destroy the front tyres, I need more front wing. Kimi actually did get some more downforce during a pit stop there. They say, I'm going to destroy the tyres before this section is over.
they go slower, they end up with more push. It's almost visible from the outside of the car. It's not visible with these other drivers. They will ask for a better setup rather than look into themselves to think, can I adapt this? Now, you've got to go a little ways down the chain for that stuff to be happening. They're all good, but you'd be surprised the lack of manipulation that does occur with people.
The soft option tyre came in for a lot of stick in China, but looking at it from the other side of the fence, which is when it was on, it was a very, very quick qualifying tyre. What is the key to a driver maximising a one-lap qualifying tyre before you've started the lap? How do you know what you can actually do with the tyre?
Well, first thing is you take as little out of it as possible, so that if you don't quite know what you can get out of it, you've got a bit of a margin you can make a mistake within. But you will get that feeling. A driver will just push the throttle, and maybe it could even be half throttle, three-quarters throttle on the exit of a slow corner. He'll turn the wheel in a certain way at a certain speed, and he'll get a better turn in than what he thought. And when he gets to the full racing corner the next time, he will know how hard or soft to turn that wheel. You get these messages. It tells you it doesn't have to be at maximum speed. Prost always tested at three-quarter speed or at 90% speed. He went absolutely flat out doing that stuff. You can get the message, and it's usually best to do it on a slowish corner. And I've turned the wheel like this. It did this. Okay, now I'm coming up and commit. I'm going to turn it at half the rate, at an increased rate. You get those messages. Same with the throttle. With minuscule inputs by a driver, you can get minuscule messages back. And when you make a mistake with the rate you've turned the wheel or gone on the brake or gone on the throttle, it's a tiny mistake. And you've adapted by the next corner. But it's down to how progressively and how tiny you can make your inputs, steering and your feet and your hands.
And how big a factor or not is braking later from high speed when you're on that quick lap with a lot of grip?
You can do it a little bit, but you've got to be careful you don't move your body any different. Usually you'll decide, I'm going to brake 5 meters later here, poof, on the brake, and you move your body different. So what one has to do...
What do you mean by move your body differently?
That is decide to punch the brake pedal a bit harder because you're arriving faster, or punch the throttle a bit harder because because you may have a bit more grip and so on. Usually when you get into a really compressed situation, people move their bodies in a slightly more rigid and abrupt way. And what one has to do is have a two-level way of driving where you separate the fear from the feel. What you see through your visor coming at you with the rate you move your body, where you pull the levers down here as well, on a threshold, easy to do slow. But when you absolutely think this is the latest I'm going to brake, still, and I'm going to brake a little bit later, still move yourself in the same way.
As Rob Wilson, as erudite as ever, very interesting, I think, to hear him talk and to remind us that the smaller the input, the less likely the mistake to occur. And we won several questions along these lines as well, but I'll read one out here. This is from Ernie Black, whose poem at the end of the show I hope to be able to read. Hope to be able to find enough time to do it, Ernie. But a good question. Hi, Peter, Rob. How much of Romain's struggles, Romain Grosjean that is, are confidence versus car setup and tyres? Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because Lotus F1 have put out a pre-race preview for Bahrain, and James Allison has asked that question by his questioner within that press release, and he says none of the problems that Romain is having are indeed Romain's problems. They're all caused by us not giving the car to Romain that he wants. But then he goes on to say, but Romain does want a different car to Kimi Räikkönen and does use the tyres differently. He uses the rears more than Kimi uses the fronts more. And I think the questioner then goes on to say, well, in that case, shouldn't Romain adjust his style to Kimi's if that's the way the car is going and it's quick? And James kind of says, well, you can't expect everybody to be the same, or words to that effect. But I think, and I've talked to Rob about this quite a lot, that Romain's movements actually are a lot bigger than Kimi's. And exactly what Rob was just saying there, Kimi has these incredibly minuscule movements, very like Jenson Button, very like Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso. Very difficult to see the movement going on. You just see Kimi driving like this on the onboard if you follow him. Romain, you can definitely see more movement going on, particularly on the hands. We don't know what's going on with the footwork because we don't have any footwell cams in the cars. But watching the way Romain drives, he is definitely more movement on everything he does. and therefore he is more reflexy. You heard Rob saying there that it's not about reflexes at all. It's about manipulation of the car. But Roma is one of these guys that drives on reflex to some extent. And so the only way he is going to actually get his pace back and continue to build a margin of error into his driving that he needs, that everybody says he needed at the end of last year, and I've said this before, is by going to changing those fundamentals. He's got nobody better to learn from in that team than Kimi Raikkonen, of course, but whether or not he does that is another matter. I think the same applies actually to Esteban Gutierrez. It was interesting to see his post-race China comment was something like, I did make a mistake, and it cost me in qualifying. I've got to be more precise. I've got to eliminate the errors, and I've got to be faster, blah, blah, blah. All that sort of stuff. But he isn't going to be able to do that unless he has a different foundation, which is smaller movements into everything that he does. Otherwise, he's going to be driving on the edge of that razor blade, and he may get 5 corners absolutely brilliantly, but the 6th one is going to be slightly too much or slightly too less, and then, as Rob always says, the survival instinct kicks in. So interesting to see the development of these younger drivers alongside drivers like Kimi and Fernando. We can talk about this for hours, and we will as the season progresses, because there's so many questions that we can put to Rob and indeed to other experts in the field. And I love getting your input as well about that. We all love talking about drivers, and it's not something we talk about that often in Formula One because we're so inundated with data about the cars and the pit stop and the strategy, blah, blah, blah. Speaking of which, I guess we should start to embrace some of these generic questions that are coming on Facebook. Chip McDonald, thank you very much for yours. It's an incredibly well-written message, actually. Hi, Peter. At the risk of sounding like a dilettante, it seems like I watched 2 races today. One went from lap 1 to about lap 10, went away for a while, and then came back about 5 laps to go. You get the gist of where Chip is coming from here. He's basically saying a lot of stuff going on, too many place changes, too many pit stops. You really don't know what's going on. I wasn't sure what was going on until the last laps stopped and played out. Is this racing versus strategy? Is this real racing? I think is what the question is. Well, I don't think, you're talking to a guy that loves pure Formula One motor racing without any artificial aids at all, without any contrived guaranteed pit stops, without any DRS. So I can only agree with you, Chip. We live with what we live. We all love the sport. I'm not going to walk away from it just because they've changed the rules. But for me, the best driver in the best car should always be the winner. And if he wins from the pole, start to finish, that says something emphatically. And I love that about racing. I think that's what it's all about. And if people are going away and not watching Formula One because that's happening, and I don't believe that ever was the case, because if you look at the numbers of TV viewers there were in the key Formula One countries, Germany and Italy, and to some extent France, when Michael Schumacher was dominating Formula One, they weren't small. And Formula One was actually in quite a healthy state then, TV viewer-wise. But that's another subject. Let's just take the purity of it. What I still think needs to happen in Formula One is that we need to have more access to that purity. We need to see how those pure laps and those pure races are driven, because there's so much going on within that. It's captivating television, if only we had access to it. And we don't, by and large. We don't have access to all the things that I believe add up to the purity of a pole lap and the purity of a start-to-finish win by 35 seconds. It can be captivating television, as I say, but at the moment, it's let's tick the box of more overtaking, let's tick the box of more place changes. This race was incredible because we had more place changes than ever before. Well, I don't buy that, but then a lot of people, I think that's the answer, and so we have to go along with it. So, Chip, I haven't really answered your question, but I've just sort of given my opinion on the whole thing. Matt Clayton raises an interesting point about the green focus and carbon neutral factories and the press releases that keep coming out about all the great work the teams are doing on that side. And then we have the issue of the Pirellis being so short-lived in their life, and the carbon footprint of the whole tyre thing anyway. Well, again, don't get me going on this one, because we had a very stable tyre situation in Formula One. We had 2 great tyre companies. Yeah, Bridgestone eventually pulled out, and as they inevitably were going to do because of the economic situation in Japan and the world crisis. But Michelin would probably be still in the sport if we hadn't kicked them out and treated them so badly. And they're a great French tyre company. And maybe Pirelli would have come in, and maybe we'd be in competition, or maybe we'd be doing things in a bit more rationally. I don't know. But I think that at the moment it is a bit of a mess, because in having only Pirelli, the cheapest simplest way of giving Pirelli some sort of benefit from being in Formula One is to create this situation where we have these artificial short stints. But it's a difficult one for a tyre company, because the simple answer is, why can't Pirelli build tyres that last longer? We know the answer, and we continue to preach the gospel on that, I hope. And I don't think it behoves anybody who earns a living in Formula One to be in any way critical. I was actually quite pleased today to see Kimi Räikkönen coming out there and saying, what's wrong with the tyres? We're all in the same situation. If they're going to go off, just treat them a bit kinder. Anyway, that's our situation. Let's get on with it. Good old Kimi. I think he's absolutely correct. And he made the point that we don't often have to drive, or we don't often drive at 100% anyway, because we're always conserving something on the car. Another good point. If it's not tyres, it's fuel. If it's not fuel, it's brakes or something else. Right. Daniel Ricciardo, what a drive by Daniel, the young Australian driving for Scuderia Toro Rosso in the Chinese Grand Prix. He went very well in Bahrain last year, qualified 6th, I think, but didn't get a result in the race. But here he had a very good qualifying, qualified 7th, and he parlayed that into 7th place in the race, despite an early lap shunt with Nico Rosberg's Mercedes. So we caught up with Daniel just after he'd arrived, looking a little bit bleary-eyed, and that's why he's in the shade probably. Well, that's my excuse. But anyway, he's on Skype. But it was great to talk to Daniel when he checked into his hotel in Bahrain. This is what he had to say.
First of all, congratulations on your result in China. Brilliant stuff. Congratulations also on the Australians in the US Masters Golf. I don't know if you were following that, but it's unbelievable, the Australians in sport at the moment.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter. It was my 7th place is not quite living up to a Masters standard from Mr. Scott. It was very, very good on his behalf. But yeah, we had a pretty good weekend, I think.
Oh, you had your best weekend ever, really, didn't you, in that sense? And I know you must be excited now because you're in Bahrain, where last year you had a great qualified 6th, I think. But the thing that I thought was most interesting is that you didn't actually look or seem to be that confident after Friday practice in China.
Yeah, it was. I think Friday, in terms of our speed, I don't think we thought we were going to be, running in 7th on Saturday or Sunday. I think at that stage we were lingering outside the top 10, but probably weren't there yet. But yeah, we made some changes Friday night, and I think it really helped us a lot for Saturday. And it was great. We were quick in qualifying, but managed to back it up in the race. And I think we were genuinely, the 7th quickest car. I think we did well, and it's not like we lucked into it. I think Rosberg was the only guy in front that retired from memory. So it was a pretty good run for us.
Yeah, well, whilst on that subject, of course, you had a little bit to do with Nico's race early on. Just tell us about that. It wasn't captured that well by television, so what you tell us, we will believe, Dan.
No worries. It's I'll be honest. It was my mistake. I chopped a bit of the front wing off my car. So it was, I think, lap 4. It was at the time where Rosberg started to drop back a bit. Grosjean had just passed him, and I had a good exit out of turn 6, and got had a bit of a slipstream and got on the curves as well, and just mistimed it. I had basically a bigger toe than I expected, and I pulled out a little bit too late and clipped his wheel with the front of my wing, the corner of my wing, which chopped a big part of it off. So that lap for me was the box and change the front wing and go back out there. So I could see the debris fly off, and I was sure I damaged the wing, but I was actually surprised I didn't cut his tyre. So I was actually pleased I didn't, because it was my fault, and I would have felt a bit guilty. So that was I paid for my mistake.
Well, you recovered beautifully. But just to tidy up on that incident, you said it was coming out of turn 6. Now, the map that I refer to, the FIA map, obviously turn 7 is that very, very quick left-hander. So you're saying that it was on the approach to that very fast left-hander, and you were looking maybe to pass going into that quick corner? Yeah.
So I had better traction out of the hairpin, so that the right-hander, turn 6 hairpin. And I remember I had a good run, and I was planning to go to the inside, but he covered it, and then as I said, by the time I pulled to the outside, I pulled out too late. So whether I had enough momentum to then make the pass stick, I think it would have been close, but yeah, I mucked it up for myself before then.
Well, what I was leading on to saying is that it is quite an unusual place to want to pass somebody, but nothing wrong with that. But it suggests, of course, that you were obviously pretty happy also with your car on that fast corner in turn 7. And if you could perhaps elaborate a little bit on how good, or maybe compared with, say, other circuits, other races, how good the car did feel on that quick corner there.
Yeah, we definitely made big improvements in China, and the one thing we needed was reliability, particularly from the exhaust issue we had, and the team seemed to have definitely got that sorted and maybe found a bit more performance at the same time. So we ticked off 2 boxes, in China, which was really good, and obviously we've got to continue it now. One weekend or one off is not good enough, so we want to see how we fare in Bahrain, and then the rest of the races coming up. But it was good, and I think with at that stage of the race we were looking pretty good on the tyres. It was only lap 4, but I definitely saw Nico was already suffering with a bit of degradation, and as you said, it's a bit of an unusual place to pass, but I had better traction, and just I think it was the right moment to try and capitalise, because Grosjean had already, I think, passed him a couple of corners before and pulled away already quite a bit.
Yeah, and speaking of Grosjean, I mean, in terms of where you were definitely in Grosjean Hulkenberg territory, as you say, perhaps even higher than that in China, which is a great thing. And the other point is that you've managed to sustain how good that car is in terms of top speed as well. You were quick in the traps all weekend and in the race, and that's been a hallmark of the car all year. And to some extent, we were chatting about this last week, it's a bit of a hallmark of James Key's cars, because the Force India was always very quick in the straight line too.
Yeah, it's the plan, I guess, really to still not sacrifice too much downforce in the corners and whatever, and keep that speed on the straight with less amounts of drag. So we definitely had a good compromise around China, and it worked well for us. The setup we had and our race pace. Yeah, as we saw, it was definitely competitive, with no strings attached. So
yeah.
We definitely want to consistently try and produce that now, and try and improve as well. 7th is a great result for the team, but there's still 6 more places we can get. So
well,
that's where we're looking.
It's great to hear you talking that way. A lot of talk about obviously degradation and the soft tyre and the option, and how few laps you can get out of it in China. But can I just ask you, when you were getting the grip out of that option tyre, i.e. in Q3, in terms of your lap, how good does that tyre feel when it's actually giving you that sort of level of grip?
Mate, it does. The tyre definitely does perform very well when the grip's there, whether it's for a lap or a lap and a half, depending. But no, it's.
But is it difficult to build up to that, though, to anticipate how quickly you can go in terms of depth into the corner and obviously application of power?
Yeah, the grip the option was giving us in China caught us by surprise. The lap time difference between the prime and the option was 2 seconds. For some guys even more, which is a massive difference, and to anticipate that before actually using the tyre, it's hard to. So, in FP2, when we first put the option on, you push a bit harder than the prime, but it's pretty much as the lap continues, you start to understand how much it's got, and you build up during that lap. But obviously, then come qualifying, you've got to completely trust it. And by that stage, we knew though it was good already out of the box and on the first lap. So you just go into the first corner committed, and then the grip is definitely good for that one lap. It was impressive.
You got the hard and the medium in Bahrain. How do you see those two pairing out?
I think it's obviously it's the most conservative choice that can be made for tyres. The 2 hardest compounds. So Bahrain is going to have some hot track temperatures, and that normally can lead to some degradation. So I think it's probably not a bad call to have the hard and medium. We're going to have to see how it evolves, but I don't think it should be too too indifferent to what we've had.
No, I mean, one imagines that given, there's always talk about dust on the track as well and the wind and so forth, that on Friday, FP1, FP2, there's going to be quite a lot of talk about lack of grip, I guess. But, like all weekends, the track's going to rubber in, and it's going to be a question of predicting and anticipating what the circuit's going to be like halfway through the race.
Yeah, definitely. That's the main thing, I guess, with Bahrain. I noticed last year is FP1 was Friday morning practice. Not much grip, mainly due to the dust, and I guess the track probably isn't used that much as well. But it definitely ramps up, and by the end of the weekend, there's good grip on the circuit. So you've just got to evolve with the track in terms of setup. You've got to anticipate what it will be like for the next session and the next day, and it makes it interesting. What might work for your car. In that particular session you're in, may not be the key for qualifying or for the race. So you definitely got to look ahead and anticipate. So these are things which experience and coming back a second time here will help out a bit, I think. So that's nice.
Well, as I say, you must be looking forward to it, and I can't think that you're in any way sorry that you've got this race back to back with China as well, because when you've got a result like that, you can move straight on to the next one, and it's a circuit on which you went so well last year in qualifying. Yeah,
definitely. I enjoy back-to-backs. I think it's good to sort of keep momentum going, particularly if you've come off a good first weekend in the series. But generally I like to sort of keep the rhythm and keep flowing. So I enjoy it, and it's good. We had a quick car in China, and it hasn't given the teams, the other teams, too much time in between the races to throw too many parts on.
Good.
So it should hopefully work in our favour.
And how was the trip from China to Bahrain?
Yeah, we flew. We couldn't get. There wasn't too many good flight options, so we had an indirect flight Sunday night. So that there was not much time to let the race soak in. It was pretty much straight after the engineers briefing, hotel, shower, and then to the airport. So it was okay, mate. I mean, that's how it is. That's travelling in Formula One for you.
Yeah.
It was a pretty lengthy trip, actually. I didn't realise how long it is. You think the countries are closer, but no, it was a good, what was it, all up? Yeah, probably a good 14-hour trip.
Finally, Daniel, our other guest, Jonathan Giacobazzi, wants me to say hi to you. He's a big fan, and he said something along the lines of he's got another pizza lined up for you, or something like that. I don't know what it was.
Yeah. Oh, he showed me pretty much the best pizza place I've ever been to in my life. So unfortunately, that's been closed down. It was in Monza, and that's good news though. It sounds like he's found another one. So good on him. Thanks, Jonathan.
Okay, thanks so much for joining us. I know you've got a hectic schedule. You're working out probably tomorrow morning. What is the schedule tomorrow? Actually, yeah, I saw you. What is your schedule tomorrow morning? Just a matter of interest.
Mate, tomorrow morning is just some, as you said, working out, a little bit of training. You don't want to do too much, particularly the week of a race, but after a back-to-back as well. You just want to try and stay healthy more than anything and stay fresh. So just some light training just to, keep some energy into the body. But then in the afternoon I'll have some meetings with the engineers and sort out the plan for the weekend.
Good stuff, mate. Well, all the best, and again, congratulations on that brilliant result. I hope you build on it in Bahrain and continue to build on it as the season goes. To you and the team, Scuderia Toro Rosso, thank you so much.
Thanks, Peter. Cheers, guys. Appreciate it.
The excellent Daniel Ricciardo and that 7th place in China. Let's hope he has another good result in Bahrain. What a cool Aussie he is, and he's driving really well now. Good to see. A few quick questions before we move on to our next phase of the show. Crimson Tonight remembering, of course, that this show is brought to you in association with F1 Racing magazine, and that the next issue of F1 Racing will be on the newsstands next week, and they may even have advanced copies in Bahrain this weekend, and there is a front cover to watch out for. That's the next edition of F1 Racing. Crimson Tonight says, Peter, will you finally reveal who was the scrutineer from F1 Racing of old? Cheers, David. No, I won't actually. I don't think we're allowed to. I'll have to ask permission from Anthony Rollinson, the current editor-in-chief, who's not with us today. He's in Bahrain, actually, before we can do that. But we might be able to. It's a good question. I do know the answer, but I can't say anything at the moment. And Simon Russell, interesting question, says, love the news show. In episode 4, you went through the latest edition of F1 Racing. Some of the articles you talked about aren't in the Australian edition, most notably Scarbs's. After previewing the digital version, it looks like we missed out on about 30 pages worth of content. Will we in Australia get to read this missing content in subsequent issues? Well, it's something that we've now raised on air, so I guess it's something that will go to higher levels. And again, we need to speak to the powers that be about that one. I didn't realize that the editions would be different. Although, what would be the point of having an Australian edition if it wasn't different? So it's a bit of a catch-22 there. But nonetheless, we will find out the answer to that one. Thanks very much for asking the question. And Matsu says, TRE Live is very nice, but it's being very jerky for me. Stops and stutters constantly. Rish, our producer over there, anything to say about that, Rish? He's probably going to say, check your internet connection, I would think. Where we are, Rish, correct? Everything looks good, right? There's nothing jerky about this stream. We're live streaming on YouTube. Thanks to YouTube for that. It's a great new development in the world of IT. Chris in the UK, this is all on Twitter. Follow-up re-DRS. Will we look back on DRS as true overtaking in the sports history versus true overtakes? Thanks. Well, I think we'll look back on DRS the way we look back at treaded tyres, to be honest. We'll groove tyres that we had in Formula One. We'll kind of forget about it. That's my view. That's what I hope happens anyway. Paul J. Corley, watching from Washington, D.C. Can the red Supersoft tyre be used at all this year? Well, I think it was used in Australia, was it not? Need to check that, but I think it was, and I don't believe Pirelli would have it unless they were going to use it, but I think it was used in Australia. But anyway, thanks very much for that question. Right, to our next port of call, which is to the famous Jonathan Giacobazzi of the Giacobazzi family, great sponsors of Ferrari and Gilles Villeneuve from the 80s, from 79, I think. And Jonathan, a huge car collector and Formula One buff in his own right, now in the second, maybe third generation of the family, and he's putting on the Formula One show to end Formula One shows in Modena. He's going to talk about that. But first of all, when we spoke to Jonathan, it was about Fernando Alonso's big win in China. This is how the conversation went.
Jonathan, thank you very much for joining us, and congratulations to all of Italy on Fernando's win in China. Tell us about the atmosphere in Modena and what it's like in the build-up to Bahrain now.
Yeah, the atmosphere in Modena, first of all, hello to everybody. Thanks, Peter, for inviting me again. The atmosphere here in Italy is really good because this was not a victory that was just, by coincidence. It was really a victory that all the team wanted. The car actually is very good. In fact, Fernando drove an outstanding race, but I believe more than other times we have to give Ferrari as a team what they deserve, because I think the pressure that Stefano Domenicali, under the pressure of Montezemolo, put on all the team was just perfect. In fact, already from the beginning in Australia, we have seen a Ferrari that was already competitive over there, down under. It was a bit of bad luck in Malaysia, but really a wonderful win in China last weekend. And for Bahrain, what we can say, I think Ferrari already won there 4 times, and there are pretty good chance to do well as well. I mean, I would be surprised if they don't.
Jonathan, it's always easy in Italy, I think, for everybody to get overexcited about everything. The problem now, I would guess, is to keep everybody calm, especially around the Maranello Modena area, because there's so much racing still to be done and so many good teams and cars out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, under the point of view of the team, as a team, this is not a problem because the team is still away. They are flying to Bahrain directly, so they cannot be mixed with the emotions of the tifosi in Italy. And for us, at the moment at home, it will be interesting to see the race, but the pressure given especially on Ferrari from the press, and not only Italian press, it's huge. So this is why Ferrari is keeping all the mechanics focused on their jobs, not let them talk to the press never.
Jonathan, this win has come, from your point of view, at a very good moment too. Tell us about your plans and what you're working on right now.
Yeah, after the amazing success that we had last year for organizing Gilles Villeneuve events in Modena and Maranello, it was really good to take the opportunity to organize in Museo Enzo Ferrari, Modena, this year a new show. This is about Formula One, and it's going to be called the Grand Prix, la monoposto di Formula 1, that will be taking place from May the 3rd for 6 months in Modena. We are working a lot in these days. This is why, and this is the main reason why I'm not following Formula One at the Grand Prix right now, because Donelli Vini, with its collection, is giving both helmets, cars, and also overalls, body parts for this important event. It will be placed, it will be seeing 18 cars from all Formula One era, from the 50s to the nowadays cars. They will be changed once in a while, so there will be in the end a lot of cars turning over in the museum. It will be also a helmet collection, history collection. It will have the history of the overalls, trophies from the drivers, and I'm sure that every visitor that will come to see this show will be very happy and surprised to see what kind of potential Museo Enzo Ferrari Modena has. So it will be an opportunity to see actually a Formula One exhibitions that for the very first time will be held in Modena, and you know, even if Maranello Museum in the Ferrari Museum in Maranello is getting even bigger and is always outstanding with its show, we can say that we are proud in Modena to represent a Formula One exhibition with different manufacturers that in Maranello cannot be placed.
Jonathan, just give us an idea of the rarity of some of the items. For example, the helmet collection. What have we got in there?
Personally, Donelli collection is giving 59 helmets, and within those 29 are from World Championship drivers. And you can see helmets from Nino Farina, which is basically a leather helmet, going through Mike Hawthorne, Ascari, arriving to the most recent drivers like Vettel, of course Schumacher and Fernando and all the others. So it will be quite impressive because it's difficult to put all these kind of items together. There will be still a lot of Gilles Villeneuve items and Ayrton Senna, because next year the next project for the 20th anniversary of the death of Ayrton Senna, we're going to do something, I think, in Imola. But then I will talk about that later on.
Well, for the time being, just to recap and to remind our viewers, this is in Modena, not Maranello. This is not the Ferrari Formula One Museum. This is the Enzo Ferrari Museum in Modena, the original town in which Ferrari started his life, his working life.
Yeah, exactly. This is the new museum that it was giving birth last year. And it's the yellow one, as we can say, because everybody now reckons it as the yellow museum, and it is in Modena. It is in Modena, so I really would be pleased to see a lot of fans coming from all around the world to see this important event, because it's difficult to organize. There are lots of other events to be scheduled in Enzo Ferrari Museum in Modena for the future. So Formula One, it's going to be one-off chance to come and see such a collection.
Can't wait. I'm looking forward to it, even as we speak. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck to you, the Ferrari team, and, as I say, all of Italy for Bahrain this weekend.
Yeah, let me say one last thing. I was really happy to see Piero Ferrari finally on the podium, because I think that when Stefano Domenicali asked him to go on the podium himself, Piero was surprised, but He's often behind the shadow of Ferrari, and he's doing so much, and he's putting himself so much inside in it that I was just very happy to see Mr. Ferrari getting the trophy for Ferrari on the podium this time. It was really, really nice.
A wonderful moment indeed. Thank you, Jonathan. Talk to you
Grazie
soon.
Everybody, hope to see you in Modena. Ciao, Peter.
Ciao, grazie.
Ciao.
Jonathan Giacobazzi, and if you haven't had any of his Donelli or Giacobazzi Lambrusco, first Lambrusco I think made by the family back in 1925, have some, gorgeous. Nice those comments as well about Piero Ferrari, I think at the end. Not too many people noticed that or commented about it, but I think that he's absolutely correct. Piero has been in the shadow a little bit of everything that's been going on at Ferrari, but he's always been there. A wonderful guy. Very nice man, and always interesting to talk to. Known him for 25 years now. Great guy. So a bit of news. Formula 3 kicked off at Silverstone last weekend. Good to see it kicking off at Silverstone, the home of Formula 3, you could argue, over the years. Good wins for Harry Tincknell, who won 2 races. British driver. Sorry, 2 poles and a win. Driving for Carlin. Very good start of the year to him. Congratulations to Harry. And wins for Raffaele Mattiello. No surprise there. Very quick in Euro F3 last year. Drives for the Prema Power Team, a Ferrari young driver. And also Felix Rosenqvist, also a quick runner in Euro F3 for the last couple of years, driving for Muka Motorsport. But Britain's Alex Lynn also looked very good, got a couple of poles, and finished on the podium too. So Formula 3 looking very healthy in terms of that European Championship. Gerhard Berger's been behind a lot of reorganization of Formula 3. So I guess we should pay credit to Gerhard for putting that together, and he knows all about Formula 3. He raced in Formula 3 for a couple of years, very well too. Right, more questions coming in. Thank you so much. Actually, Matthew's just come back and said, sorry, mate, it just keeps cutting out. I'm going to watch it on demand. And don't forget, you can, of course, watch the show on demand, either in video form or audio form. And we'll have big news about our on-demand capability in the next few weeks, developing this show as I speak. Miculus Robert on Twitter saying, Peter, I was just wondering, which was your very first Grand Prix that you saw? Well, actually, it was the 67, showing my age now, 67 Monaco Grand Prix. I was in the grandstand with my dad, which was the station hairpin grandstand. The station hairpin had been removed there, and they put a grandstand in. Now it's a big hotel. And we sat in that grandstand for the race, and in practice, we watched from the chicane. So that was a wonderful thing. And I was going through the LAT photographic archives not so long ago, and all the images on this show, courtesy of LAT Photographic. Thank you very much to them for the beautiful images, particularly Farina and Mike Hawthorne there in the Giacobazzi interview. And I'm just finishing by saying that I found a couple of shots from the 67 race, one of them Jim Clark on full opposite lock, another Mike Spence in the BRM, and in the background, in the grandstand, you can see me and my dad. Very nice to see. Well, nice for me to see anyway. Our last chat is with a friend of mine who you may have seen on our YouTube channel doing our interviews in Spanish with Checo Perez when he first came to Woking to meet the press, the British press, with his McLaren contract in his pocket. That's Diego Marino, and he's actually in Bahrain this weekend in quite an interesting job. He's assistant to the chief FIA scrutineer in the Formula 1 pit lane all weekend, and he's in Bahrain now. He knows Bahrain well because he used to live and work in Bahrain, so I thought he'd be a good guy just to have a very quick chat to about the atmosphere in the build-up to the race. Lots of talk about Bahrain. Should we be there? Should we not be there? What is the atmosphere like? This is how the conversation with Diego went. It's a bit choppy because we're on Skype and it's the internet, but it's okay.
Diego, thanks for joining us. First of all, just tell us where you are. Well, no, even before you tell us where you are, tell us what that is around your neck.
Oh, it's called a shal. It's cashmere like scarf.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
It's pretty popular with Pakistani and Indian workers around the Middle East, you know, to cover themselves from the sun and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, being a Madrid domiciled Mexican, you're going to need that as well. Diego, where are you right now? Where are you speaking to us from?
We're at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel.
Right,
which is one of the hotels which guests many of the team managers and the drivers. So it's a pretty busy hotel during this part of the Grand Prix week here in Bahrain.
And you're in the business center by the look of it there, which is very nice of them to let you use that.
very friendly staff here at the business center, helping out.
Diego, you know Bahrain well. You lived in Bahrain. You worked in Bahrain long before we had Grand Prix there, and you're now working. You've worked for several years now as an FIA scrutineer. You're doing that again this weekend. Tell us what the atmosphere is like this weekend so far in Bahrain.
Well, I know Bahrain pretty good, and last year things were a bit, should I say, in a tense calm. In my particular experience last year, I didn't see any of the riots and problems that happened around during the last 2 years. But you could sense back then that things were a bit sad, you know, about problems having around. And this time around, I think I'm seeing again the should I say the happier or the better side of Bahrain. Lots of new things around town. Many buildings, many new roads, events happening. So I'm glad that things are, should I say, looking much better than they did last year. Well, especially because Bahraini people are great people, great nation.
Yeah, they are, and I've always enjoyed every trip I've had to Bahrain. What is your role this weekend with the FIA?
I'm assistant to the chief scrutineer. And my main role during the Grand Prix this weekend will be walking up and down the pit lane.
Oh, it sounds terrible.
Well, it's going to be very hot, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah, okay, right.
Dusty.
Well, that's excellent.
My role during the Grand Prix this weekend will be walking up and down the pit lane.
Oh, it sounds terrible.
Well, it's going to be very hot, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah, okay, right.
Dusty.
Well, that's excellent. Congratulations on that. You've put in, how many years now have you been working as a scrutineer?
Recalling back on Bahrain, this is my seventh year here in Bahrain. It's actually, I regard this as my local race. For me, this is where it all began with my role with the FIA when I lived here. And I became involved with the Bahrain Motor Federation, and after that I became involved with the FIA in Spain. So in many regards, it's my home race. And I always enjoy coming back and seeing old friends, and Shakira, and having a great time.
I can imagine. And one of the nicest moments I always think of the Bahrain weekend is Saturday night, or indeed Friday night, but especially Saturday night when it's very calm. The teams have gone back to the city because everybody's in Parc Fermé, and it's always a beautiful night sky there, or usually is in Bahrain. And I guess that's a moment when you, in your role, you're going to be there and you're going to be sniffing the air big time.
No, actually, one of the nicest parts of this, nicest, should I say the most romantic part of this weekend, I think, is that the sunset's pretty early. So teams usually stay late in the evenings working and all. So they light up the paddock with this very nice lighting of the palm trees. And people, I mean, it's 6 p.m. in the evening and it's dark time. And you can see the garage is all lighted up in the evening. People working. And it's a lonely place, you know, in the middle of the desert. Beautiful. So you see the circus working there at night. It's nice.
And as I say, on Saturday night, it's eerie because the cars are in Parc Fermé and they have these wide-angle fisheye lenses in each garage, watching for movement, watching for anything that's going on. Yes, the cars are sealed. I don't have the schedule for this weekend, but once the Parc Fermé conditions begin at the end of qualifying, at the end of each car's qualifying, the cars are sealed and covered. I mean, when the working period ends during Saturday, and these cars are being monitored. I mean, the scrutineers leave the garage, and mechanics leave the garage, and everybody leaves. And there's a fisheye lens on top of the garage for each car, which senses movement during the nighttime. So if somebody tries to sneak and, like, you know, break a seal, which hasn't happened. It'll be, I mean, the cameras will light up and people will know that, I mean, that, you know, the truck removal could be tampered. Diego, great talking to you. What's your daily routine? What time do you have to be at the track every day? What time do you have to get up? We're gathering tomorrow at 7:30. We have an initial
briefing by the local Bahraini Motor Federation, and later we gather up in the FIA garage and just have further briefings about our activities during the weekend.
Well, you enjoy yourself. I know it'll be a lot of fun from your point of view. You're a real enthusiast, and guys like you that get out there and develop jobs for yourselves within Formula One should be applauded. I think it's wonderful. I know you're doing that on your own expenses, and there's nothing to be made there in terms of money, but it's guys like you that make the sport happen. So good on you, and enjoy the weekend. Diego, thanks for talking to us.
Absolutely, Peter. Many thanks. Great being here with you.
Okay, great. Enjoy. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yes, bye-bye.
Bye.
Diego Marino, apologies there, a few glitches on the... Well, he's not actually that fat. He's a runner, so he's actually quite slim, but few issues with the video, picture, and the sound, but worth doing, I think, because it captures some of the feel for, well, the passion of somebody like Diego Marino, but also some of the feel of being on the ground in Bahrain and the build up to that weekend and the excitement in the city, which is great to see. We've got to wind up. It's amazing again how quickly the time has gone. Thank you so much for all your support. Let me say here before I forget, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. That is the way this show moves forward. It's going incredibly well right now, but if you haven't subscribed, do so. It doesn't cost any money. It just means pressing a button, and then you'll be continually updated every time we do put new content onto our YouTube channel. And we do put a lot of new content on, not only about the show, but also other little things. Some people may know that on my personal website, peterwindsor.com, we're reliving, going in a time machine back to 1963, reliving Jim Clark's epic season, race by race, weekend by weekend, and all that sort of stuff. I'll be doing interviews as that season progresses, as well as the 63 season progresses, and I'm really enjoying that. It's been brilliant, but that's another subject altogether. Lots of questions. I've got to pick one. Avinash Puranik, I hope I've got that correct, on Twitter. Lots of talk about women in Formula One. Can you add your opinion to finish off the show? Well, I've expressed this before. I think we had a perfect candidate. We had Danica Patrick when she was not yet in NASCAR, when she was going very well in single-seaters in America. She expressed an interest in doing Formula One. Nobody really took her seriously, and I think that was a huge mistake. At the time, I said I thought BMW should have hired her as a second driver alongside Robert Kubica. They didn't. They had Nick Heidfeld. Nick, very good driver, did a lot of things. But looking back now, if they'd run Robert Kubica, Danica Patrick for 3 years in those BMW Formula One cars, for sure they would have sold more cars in America, I would have thought. Secondly, it would have been brilliant for Formula One in general, and BMW in particular. And thirdly, would it have changed things that much? They still came away with that win from Canada, and yeah, Nick got a few good results, but Danica wouldn't have been as quick as Nick, but she would have done a great job. So again, I think Formula One missed an opportunity there, much as they kind of missed the opportunity of keeping Michelin in the sport. But as for the future, lots of good young girls out there, and let's hope that one of them does get the break and is taken seriously by the Formula One teams. But it will take an F1 team to say, right, we're going to give her some proper test mileage if and how we can. We're going to sign her as a proper third driver, if nothing else, and then going for it and taking them seriously. But let's see what happens there. Right. I think that's it. I'm going to try and end. I know we're kind of over time, but I promised to read one of Ernie's poems, and we haven't done so yet on the show this year, and he's written another one post-China, so I'm going to read that to finish off the show, so bear with me on this. I'm reading it cold, so let's hope I can do it in sort of, Rob Wilson eloquence. Welcome, race fans, to TRE Live. With Rob Wilson, our guest, we'll have plenty of drive. Let's quickly recap the Chinese Grand Prix. It was Formula One's round number 3. Where Mercedes ruled just 1 year ago. Would they do it again? Well, now we all know. Lewis took pole for his new German team. His first win for Mercedes would be quite the dream. For the Shanghai circuit, his car seemed to be moulded, but it's not quite how the Grand Prix unfolded. As the cars lined up and the lights went out, they launched off the line madly, scampering about. Fernando and Massa were led by the Brit. Kimi's start was just dreadful, one would have to admit. Pit stops ensued as teams played out their plans. Strategies from the pits were in Pirelli's hands. Our friend Aussie Grit was in total dismay. Despair and disgust best described his day. For his unsafe release, Red Bull was fined as one wheel flew off. Webber parked and resigned. Some fabulous drives entertained a few fans. Sadly, not many people were in the grandstands. Hulkenberg led the race for just a few laps. Daniel Ricciardo was quick through the speed traps. Bianchi impressed, as is now expected, and Button showed us all why he's still well respected. Oddly, Vettel chased points instead of the win, catching Lewis by the hair of his chinny chin chin. Alonso's Ferrari crossed the line first. His DNF in Malaysia had now been reversed. Kimi followed closely, just 10 seconds back, with Hamilton third, then the rest of the pack. The championship race has been blown open wide. Who might win the crown is for you to decide. It's early days still, as we're off to Bahrain. More protests are planned, but Formula One won't abstain. Action on and off track, which will be hard to beat. A cracking new season. We're all in for a treat. Thank you very much, Ernie, the F1 poet. Great stuff. Thank you to the fans, too, for your support and your interest and all your questions. See you next week. We've got Craig Scarborough looking back at the Bahrain Grand Prix with us. Don't miss it.